March 17, 1945, Oberwesel, Germany. SS Sturmbannführer Klaus Richter lifted the intelligence report, his gloved hand steadying the paper against the Rhine wind. His jaw tightened as he read the American force estimates. "Look at this," Richter said, dropping the paper onto the stone parapet. "The Americans think their engineers can breach our defenses." SS Hauptsturmführer Werner Vogel nodded sharply, his Knight's Cross catching morning light. Their previous attempts failed at Cologne, at Koblenz, at Mainz, each time crushed with minimal effort. SS Obersturmführer Hans Müller, Chief Intelligence Officer for Army Group B, shifted uncomfortably. "Sturmbannführer, the reports from the Ruhr indicate they've developed new demolition techniques. Their production of explosives has," but Richter waved him off. "New techniques? We've held this bridge against 3 assaults. We destroyed their engineers at Arnhem, inflicted 73% casualties. At the Ruhr dams, we killed 42 engineers in 12 minutes. The bridge had concrete reinforcement 30 meters deep, steel trusses designed by Krupp engineers, and interlocking defensive positions covering every approach. The mathematics were undeniable. No American engineer unit could survive the crossfire long enough to place charges." What Richter didn't know, what none of them could have known as they reviewed defensive positions in that command post, was that the American engineer battalion approaching from the west would demolish the entire bridge structure within 14 minutes of initial contact. The numbers would become catastrophic: 847 SS defenders killed, 1,200 wounded, 600 captured. The Americans would lose 17 men. The bridge itself would collapse into the Rhine at 02:10, taking Richter and his entire command staff with it. The confidence in that stone command post would become history's most expensive miscalculation, measured in a single night's butchery that eliminated an entire SS Kampfgruppe. Richter had earned his certainty through blood. At Normandy, his battalion had held against American attacks for 6 days, inflicting casualty ratios of 4:1. At Bastogne, his assault teams had penetrated American lines 3 times, killing 189 paratroopers in close combat. During the Ardennes offensive, his regiment had destroyed 14 American tanks in a single engagement, losing only 3 Panthers. The defensive position at Oberwesel represented German military engineering at its finest. Concrete bunkers with interlocking fields of fire, pre-sighted artillery coordinates covering every approach, machine gun nests positioned to create an impenetrable kill zone on the bridge approaches. Each bunker held 24,000 rounds of 7.92 ammunition, 6,000 rounds of 20 cannon shells, and sufficient supplies to resist a siege for 14 days. His equipment specifications exceeded Allied equivalents by every metric. The MG-42 machine guns fired 1,200 rounds per minute compared to the American Browning's 450. His 88 anti-tank guns could penetrate Sherman armor at 2,000 meters. The bridge itself had been reinforced with an additional 400 tons of steel, with demolition chambers sealed and guarded by dedicated teams. 3 previous American attempts had been slaughtered before approaching within 300 meters of the span. At the first assault on March 3, American engineers had lost 41 men in 9 minutes. The second attempt on March 9 had cost 53 casualties in 7 minutes. The third, on March 14, had been a massacre, 72 American dead in the first minute of contact. Recent American failures validated his confidence absolutely. Richter's combat record was impeccable. He had survived Kursk, where his battalion had destroyed 27 Soviet tanks. He had fought through the retreat from Ukraine, maintaining unit cohesion when neighboring formations disintegrated. At Caen, he had personally led the counterattack that temporarily recaptured the city center, killing 43 Canadian soldiers in house-to-house combat. His Knight's Cross with oak leaves had been earned at Mortain, where his Kampfgruppe had held against 3 American divisions for 4 days. He had commanded at St. Vith at the Huitgen Forest at the Rhine approaches. Every position he defended held until ordered to withdraw. His soldiers respected him. His superiors trusted him. The bridge would hold. SS Obersturmführer Müller's concerns surfaced during the evening briefing. "Sturmbannführer, intelligence reports indicate American engineer battalions are now equipped with shaped charges producing 8,000 pounds of TNT equivalent. Their new explosive compounds," Vogel interrupted. "They had explosives at Cologne. They had explosives at Remagen before we retook it. They had explosives everywhere. It changes nothing. Our defensive fire superiority makes approach impossible." Müller persisted. "The production numbers from American facilities show..." Richter cut him off. Production? They produce soft soldiers who break under fire. We produce warriors. The numbers that matter are casualty ratios, and those favor us 3-1. But Mueller had reviewed captured documents detailing American explosive production. 2.4 million pounds of TNT monthly from a single Pennsylvania facility. The entire Reich produced 800,000 pounds monthly from all sources combined. The mathematics concerned him deeply, but his warnings fell on contemptuous ears. SS Unterscharführer Ernst Kessler had witnessed American engineering attempts from his machine gun position. On March 14, he had personally killed 7 American engineers who had attempted to approach the bridge abutment. His MG-42 had fired 4,200 rounds during the 6-minute engagement. Every American who had entered the kill zone had died within seconds. The bodies still lay in the approach trench, frozen in death postures, their satchel charges undetonated. Kessler had fought in Russia, had seen the Soviet engineering attempts with their brutal human wave tactics. The Americans were different, more cautious, more technical, more easily broken when faced with determined resistance. His experience in 23 combat engagements confirmed German tactical superiority. The mathematics seemed irrefutable. Detroit, Michigan, February 1945. Robert Harrison wiped sweat from his forehead, the factory heat oppressive despite the Michigan winter outside. The Packard Motor Plant No. 4 produced 847 shaped demolition charges daily. Every 4 minutes, another charge rolled off the assembly line, each containing explosive power equivalent to 400 pounds of TNT compressed into a 17-pound package. Women and minorities staffed 73% of the production line positions. The facility operated 24 hours daily, 3 8-hour shifts producing charges that would be shipped to engineer battalions across Europe. In January 1944, America produced just 12,000 shaped charges monthly across all facilities. By June 1944, production reached 89,000 monthly from 6 major plants. By February 1945, Packard Plant No. 4 alone was producing 25,400 shaped charges monthly, more than the entire German Reich produced of all explosive types. This single facility was producing more demolition capability than the combined output of Germany, Italy, and Japan. The production progression had been staggering. At peak capacity, the plant could have demolished every major bridge in Germany in under 3 months. The facility's output exceeded German production capacity by a factor of 43-1. Dorothy Richardson, previously a seamstress from Dearborn, now operated the explosive compound mixing station that produced the pentolite filling for 847 charges every 24 hours. She had worked at the plant for 11 months, her hands steady despite handling compounds that could obliterate buildings. Her station processed 14,000 pounds of explosive compound daily, more than the entire German army allocated to all engineer units on the Western Front monthly. During her 8-hour shift, she filled charges that contained sufficient explosive power to demolish 43 major bridges. Her productivity exceeded that of any German equivalent by a factor of 17-1. She produced more demolition charges in one shift than the combined output of all German facilities in Bavaria. The single mixing station she operated had greater monthly output than every German facility south of Munich combined. James Washington, from Birmingham, Alabama, operated the detonator assembly line that produced 2,400 electric detonators daily. His station's output exceeded the entire Japanese monthly production of all detonator types. Washington had been hired in March 1944, trained in 6 days, and within 3 weeks was exceeding production quotas by 30%. The detonators he assembled were more reliable than German equivalents, failure rates of 0.03% compared to German rates of 2.7%. His single station's daily output exceeded the entire Italian arms industry's monthly capacity. Every detonator he assembled was tested electrically, with failed units discarded immediately. The rejects from his station's quality control, averaging 12 units daily, exceeded monthly allocations for entire German engineer regiments. Washington worked alongside 47 other operators in identical stations, their combined output staggering by any historical measure. Charles Thompson, $1-a-year man from DuPont Chemical, managed the explosive compound synthesis that produced the pentolite filling. Thompson had left a $75,000 annual salary to coordinate production logistics, his expertise in chemical engineering invaluable. Under his management, the facility achieved yields of 94% efficiency, the highest of any explosive production plant worldwide. He had streamlined the production process, reducing manufacturing time per charge from 47 minutes to 19 minutes. His innovations had eliminated 3 bottlenecks that previously limited output. The system he designed could scale production to 1,400 charges daily if military requirements demanded, though current quotas required only 847 daily to meet all European theater requirements with substantial surplus. Americans discarded 340 pounds of explosive compound daily as quality control rejects. The German army allocated 73 pounds monthly to engineer units for all demolition work on the Western Front. The waste from a single shift exceeded German monthly combat allocations by a factor of 4 to 1. Americans threw away more pentolite in quality testing than Germany produced for combat use. The discarded material had sufficient power to demolish 17 major bridges, material that never left the factory floor, swept into disposal bins and destroyed. This single facility's waste stream represented more explosive power than the entire German engineer corps possessed for defensive demolitions across 400 miles of front line. The mathematics were obscene. The waste from packaging operations exceeded German production capacity for all materials. Workers threw away cardboard containers that Germany rationed strictly for critical military applications. A single day's packaging waste contained more usable cardboard than German forces allocated monthly for ammunition packaging across all fronts. The cafeteria discarded more food daily than the Wehrmacht garrison at Oberwesel received monthly. 847 workers consumed 4,200 calories daily on average, with surplus food exceeding 1,800 pounds monthly. German soldiers at the bridge subsisted on 2,100 calories daily when rations arrived on schedule. American factory workers ate better than German assault troops. The aluminum scrap from manufacturing exceeded German monthly allocation for all purposes. Americans discarded 1,400 pounds of aluminum weekly from demolition charge components, minor imperfections rendering them unsuitable despite remaining functional. Germany allocated 800 pounds of aluminum monthly to all engineer units for all purposes across all fronts. The scrap aluminum from 1 week at Packard Plant No. 4 could have built the entire German allotment for 3 months. Workers threw away aluminum casings that German engineers would have carefully hoarded and reused indefinitely. The casual waste from American production exceeded German maximum effort by margins that defied comprehension. Discarded detonators from quality control testing numbered 72 daily. Each rejection represented a functioning unit with minor cosmetic flaws or slightly elevated failure probabilities, still vastly superior to German standard equipment, but failing American quality standards. Germany produced 43 detonators daily across all facilities for all purposes. The American rejection pile exceeded total German production. Engineers in the field received only perfect units. Anything less was destroyed. The rejected detonators possessed sufficient reliability for combat use by any army except America's. The waste represented industrial capacity that German planners couldn't conceptualize. The manufacturing waste from 1 month at this single facility, defective charges, rejected detonators, scrap aluminum, expired explosive compounds, damaged packaging, contained sufficient materiel to equip every German engineer unit on the Western Front for 6 months of sustained operations. Americans threw it away without hesitation, the cost negligible against production capacity. The entire German engineer corps could have operated for half a year on what one American facility discarded as insufficiently perfect. This single aspect of American logistics, the waste stream from quality control, exceeded the entire German engineer establishment's capacity to wage war. The numbers were mathematically precise and strategically catastrophic for any nation opposing American industrial might. Mueller reviewed production intelligence in his quarters, the captured American documents spread across his desk. A single facility produces 847 charges daily, he wrote in his report to Berlin. This exceeds our entire monthly capacity by a factor of 43. Their waste exceeds our production. They discard more explosive compound weekly than we manufacture monthly. The report was filed, read, and dismissed as impossible. American production figures were assumed to be propaganda, the numbers too absurd for credibility. Mueller knew better, had seen the pattern in intelligence from every front, but his warnings achieved nothing except suspicion about his resolve. March 17, 1945, Oberwesel Bridge, 0147. Kessler was checking ammunition belts when the first explosion detonated against the western bunker complex. The blast waved through him against the concrete wall, his ears ringing from the concussion that exceeded anything in his combat experience. At 01:47:14, American artillery began its preparatory bombardment. At 01:47:22, the first bunker ceased radio contact. Its structure collapsed under direct hits from 155 shells. At 01:47:38, the second bunker fell silent, its garrison killed instantly when a shell penetrated the firing aperture. Elapsed time from first shot to third bunker destruction, 41 seconds. Kill time per bunker, approximately 14 seconds. The American artillery was firing with precision that Kessler had never witnessed, each shell hitting within meters of designated targets. At 01:48:00, the fourth bunker exploded, its ammunition detonating in a secondary blast that killed the crew of Bunker 5 from concussion alone. At 01:48:19, Bunker 6 disappeared in a direct hit that penetrated 3 meters of concrete. Elapsed time, 65 seconds. 6 defensive positions eliminated in just over 1 minute. The Americans advanced under the artillery barrage, their engineers moving in teams of 12, each team carrying shaped charges that weighed just 17 pounds but could penetrate 30 inches of steel. At 01:49:00, Kessler opened fire from his position, his MG-42 traversing across the approach. He killed 2 engineers immediately, their bodies falling in the open. Kill time, 3 seconds from engagement to both deaths. But the other engineers continued advancing, using craters from the artillery barrage as cover. At 01:49:47, American return fire suppressed his position, the volume of incoming rounds forcing him below the parapet. He had fired 400 rounds in 47 seconds. Normal combat expenditure for his weapon in defensive positions was 600 rounds per day. He had exceeded that in under 1 minute. At 01:51:00, the first shaped charge detonated against the bridge abutment, the explosion different from artillery, sharper, more focused, the concussion wave traveling through the stone structure itself. Kessler felt the bridge shudder beneath him. At 01:51:34, a second charge exploded, then a third at 01:51:49. The Americans were placing charges with speed that should have been impossible under fire. Each explosion weakened the structural integrity, the engineers working with precision and coordination that suggested extensive training in exactly this scenario. Total engagement duration from first artillery shell to American engineers reaching the bridge superstructure, 4 minutes, 13 seconds. German losses in those 4 minutes, 47 dead, 92 wounded. American losses, 7 engineers killed, 4 wounded. Kill ratio, 6.7 to 1 in favor of the defenders, but the defenders were losing. Kessler fired continuously, his ammunition expenditure exceeding 2,800 rounds in under 5 minutes. The ammunition expended in this 4-minute engagement exceeded the monthly allocation for all German defensive positions in the Rhineland sector. The barrel of his MG-42 glowed red from sustained fire, the metal approaching failure temperature. At 01:53:00, Vogel reached Richter's command post, his report delivered between gasping breaths. "They're on the bridge. They're placing charges on the main supports. We've lost all western bunkers. The engineers are—" Richter cut him off. "Impossible. No unit can advance under our defensive fire. Order the reserve platoon to counterattack." Vogel stared at him. "The reserve platoon is gone. The artillery killed them in their assembly area." "Sturmbannführer, we need to withdraw." Richter struck him across the face. "We hold this bridge. I have orders directly from Berlin. We hold." But even as he spoke, another shaped charge detonated, the explosion vibrating through the command post's foundation. March 17, 1945, Oberwesel Bridge, 01:55:02:10. At 01:55:00, American engineers placed the 7th shaped charge on the main support truss, their discipline remarkable under continuous fire. German defenders were firing from every remaining position, but American smoke rounds obscured targeting, the white phosphorus creating an impenetrable fog across the bridge deck. At 01:56:00, the eighth charge was positioned. At 01:56:47, the ninth. The placement sequence was accelerating as engineers became familiar with the bridge structure and German defensive fires weakened from casualties and ammunition exhaustion. Intelligence had dismissed initial reports as exaggerated. No unit can sustain such casualties and continue advancing, the evening briefing had concluded. American morale breaks under 50% losses, but the engineers approaching the bridge had trained for this specific mission for 6 weeks. Each 12-man team knew exactly which support to target, exactly where to place charges for maximum structural effect, exactly how to withdraw after detonation. They had practiced the sequence 47 times on a replica bridge constructed in England. This was not improvisation. This was the execution of exhaustively rehearsed precision engineering under fire. Mueller had warned about the new American tactical doctrine. They're training engineer battalions specifically for bridge assault, the intelligence from captured documents indicates, but warnings were dismissed as defeatism. Now Mueller was watching those warnings manifest in real time, the Americans demonstrating capabilities that doctrine said should be impossible. Their engineers were advancing through defensive fire that should have annihilated them, placing charges with technical precision while under sustained machine gun fire, coordinating movements with artillery support that was eliminating German positions with unnatural accuracy. American production at this moment was overwhelming German capacity across every metric. While German forces at Oberwesel fought with ammunition carefully rationed over weeks, American supply lines were delivering unlimited materiel. The shaped charges being placed on the bridge supports had been manufactured 48 hours earlier in Detroit, shipped by rail to New York, transported by cargo ship to Le Havre, trucked to forward supply depots, and delivered to the engineer battalion that morning. The logistics chain that supplied this single assault exceeded the entire German supply capacity for the Western Front. Americans were fighting with unlimited resources against an enemy that was counting individual bullets. Statistics from American facilities revealed production numbers that German planners refused to believe. 2.4 million pounds of explosives monthly from one plant, 89,000 shaped charges monthly from 6 facilities, 847 charges daily from Packard alone. A single American facility exceeded all German production. Meanwhile, German factories were producing 12,000 demolition charges monthly, total, across all plants, for all purposes, all fronts. The Americans were expending more explosives in this single assault than Germany produced for an entire month. The mathematical disparity was so extreme that German intelligence assumed the numbers were fabricated propaganda. They were not. They tried reinforcing the bridge approaches with additional machine gun positions. The Americans suppressed them with artillery within minutes. They attempted to flood the approach with searchlights to eliminate concealment. American counter-battery fire destroyed the generators in seconds. They sent assault teams to eliminate engineers placing charges. American rifle fire killed every German soldier who entered the bridge deck. They called for artillery support. The artillery batteries had been destroyed by American counter-battery fire 30 minutes into the engagement. Every German tactical response was anticipated and countered with overwhelming firepower and superior logistics. The Americans were not improvising. They were executing a plan developed with resources that rendered German resistance meaningless. At 02:03:00, the American battalion commander ordered withdrawal from the bridge. All charges were placed. All engineers began moving back to Western Bank positions. At 02:04:00, the last engineer cleared the bridge deck. At 02:05:00, German forces attempted a counterattack to remove the charges, Richter personally leading 23 soldiers onto the bridge. At 02:07:00, American snipers killed 14 of the Germans, including Vogel, who died instantly from a headshot. Elapsed time from engagement to Vogel's death, 47 seconds. Richter ordered continued advance despite casualties. At 02:08:00, 9 Germans remained alive on the bridge. At 02:09:00, Richter reached the first shaped charge, his hands trembling as he attempted to disconnect the detonator. Mueller watched from the eastern bank, his field glasses trained on the bridge deck. He could see Richter struggling with the charge, could see the remaining Germans trying desperately to remove explosives from supports, could see the American engineers on the western bank preparing to trigger detonation. He knew what was coming, had known since the assault began, had tried to warn command for months that American engineering capabilities had evolved beyond German comprehension. His warnings had been dismissed as pessimism. Now they were proving accurate in the most catastrophic way possible. March 17, 1945, Oberwesel Bridge, 0210. At 02:10:00, the American engineers triggered the detonation sequence. 17 shaped charges exploded simultaneously, each producing explosive force equivalent to 400 pounds of TNT, the combined blast exceeding 6,800 pounds of TNT equivalent concentrated on primary structural supports. The main support trusses disintegrated instantly, steel girders designed by Krupp engineers shattering under focused explosive force that exceeded their stress tolerances by a factor of 40-1. The bridge deck sagged, concrete cracking with sounds like artillery fire, the entire structure beginning its collapse into the Rhine. Richter looked up as the deck beneath him failed, the stone and steel that he had sworn to hold disintegrating in one catastrophic moment. Elapsed time from detonation to bridge collapse, 14 seconds. SS Sturmbannführer Klaus Richter died when the command tower collapsed into the river, his body crushed under 40 tons of concrete and steel. Kill time, 14 seconds. The remaining 8 German soldiers on the bridge died in the collapse, their bodies swept away by the Rhine current. Total elapsed time from first shaped charge placement to complete bridge destruction, 15 minutes exactly. Total engagement duration, 23 minutes from first artillery shell to bridge collapse. Enemy losses, 847 dead, 1,200 wounded, 600 captured. American losses, 17 engineers killed, 23 wounded. Kill ratio, 48.6-1 in favor of Germans for individual casualties, but the Germans lost the bridge, lost their defensive position, and lost their ability to maintain formations east of the Rhine. The ammunition expended in this 23-minute engagement exceeded German monthly allocation for all engineer units across the entire Western Front. The explosives used to demolish the bridge exceeded German quarterly production for all purposes. The fuel consumed by American vehicles supporting the operation exceeded German weekly allocation for all units in Army Group B. At 02:10:14, as the bridge collapsed, Kessler fired his last ammunition belt at American positions across the river. His MG-42 had fired 8,400 rounds during the engagement, more than his unit's monthly allocation for sustained combat operations. The weapon's barrel failed after the 8,200th round, the metal rupturing from thermal stress, but Kessler continued firing until the belt was exhausted. At 02:10:47, American return fire killed him, his body falling across the machine gun he had operated for 9 months. Elapsed time from engagement to Kessler's death, 23 minutes 47 seconds. He had survived Russia, survived Normandy, survived the Ardennes. He died defending a bridge that American engineering capability had rendered indefensible from the moment the assault began. The systematic annihilation of the Oberwesel Bridge defenses demonstrated American engineering supremacy with mathematical precision. Germans had fought bravely, had maintained discipline under overwhelming fire, had followed orders until death. None of it mattered. American engineers had demolished a bridge that German military engineers swore was impregnable, had done so in 15 minutes under fire, and had accomplished this with losses that barely rated mention in after-action reports. This wasn't combat. This was systematic annihilation of defensive positions using overwhelming material superiority and engineering precision that rendered German tactical advantages meaningless. The bravest German soldier with the finest training could not compete with an American engineer equipped with unlimited explosives, artillery support, and logistics that delivered everything necessary within hours of request. April 1945, Prisoner Interrogation Center, Wiesbaden. Mueller sat across from the American intelligence officer, his uniform stripped of insignia, his face hollow from 3 weeks of inadequate rations. "We were not defeated by better soldiers, but by better factories," he stated flatly, the admission bitter but undeniable. "Your single facility in Detroit produced more shaped charges monthly than our entire nation produced of all explosive types. The Packard plant alone manufactured 25,400 charges monthly. Germany produced 12,000 across all facilities for all purposes. A single American factory produced more demolition capability than the combined output of Germany, Italy, and Japan. We brought military precision to an industrial war. You brought industrial capacity that rendered military precision irrelevant. His testimony continued for 3 hours, the details extracted and recorded for American military intelligence. I warned them for 6 months. I showed them the production numbers, showed them the photographs of your facilities, showed them captured documents detailing your explosive synthesis capacity. They dismissed it as propaganda. How could any nation produce such quantities? It defied historical precedent. But you weren't following historical precedent. You had revolutionized industrial production itself. You weren't just making more explosives. You were making more than you needed and discarding the surplus. That's when I knew we had lost, when I realized your waste exceeded our maximum output. Kessler survived the bridge collapse, pulled from the Rhine by American medics who treated his wounds with medicines that German field hospitals hadn't possessed for 8 months. I saw the charges, he testified during interrogation. Each one smaller than our standard demolition packs, but the explosions were... He paused, searching for words. They were focused, precise, shaped. Our charges scattered explosive force in all directions. Yours concentrated it like a weapon. We had nothing equivalent. I killed 7 of your engineers on March 14. You came back 3 days later with different tactics, different equipment, different explosives. We hadn't changed anything. We were still fighting with 1943 doctrine and 1942 equipment. The Americans had evolved. They didn't just outproduce us. They revolutionized production, distribution, and application of explosives faster than we could adapt our defenses. Additional testimonies from captured German officers revealed patterns that American intelligence was already documenting. We brought swords to a tank battle, one Wehrmacht colonel stated. You weren't fighting by the rules of warfare that we understood. You were fighting by rules of industrial production, and by those rules we never had a chance. An artillery commander testified. Your counter-battery fire was immediate. We fire 4 rounds, your radars locate us, your artillery destroys us within 2 minutes. We had to relocate after every fire mission. Eventually, we stopped firing at all because the cost of revealing our position exceeded the value of any targets we could hit. Their excess capacity exceeded our maximum effort, Mueller continued. You could lose 100 shaped charges and replace them within hours. We lost 10 demolition packs and waited weeks for replacements. You could expend 8,400 machine gun rounds in one engagement. We were rationing ammunition to 400 rounds per weapon per day. You could demolish a bridge and move to the next objective within an hour. We would spend weeks preparing similar operations. The mathematics were obscene. Every metric of material capacity favored you by factors ranging from 10 to 1 at minimum to 75 to 1 at maximum. No amount of German military skill could overcome that disparity. Production statistics extracted from German records validated Mueller's testimony with depressing precision. American production of shaped charges in early 1945, 534,000 units monthly across all facilities. German production of all demolition explosives, 12,000 units monthly. Single American factory, Packard Detroit Plant No. 4, 25,400 shaped charges monthly. Entire German explosive industry, 12,000 demolition packs monthly of all types for all purposes, all fronts. The disparity was 44 to 1 comparing all American production against all German production, or 2.1 to 1 comparing a single American facility against the entire German industrial base. No nation in history had possessed such overwhelming industrial superiority. Germany was fighting with what its factories could produce. America was fighting with what its factories could produce after discarding anything that failed rigorous quality standards. April 15, 1945, the Rhine Valley. The Oberwesel bridge demolition proved that industrial capacity determined military outcomes in ways that tactical brilliance could not overcome. Free workers outproduced slaves and pressed labor by margins exceeding 10 to 1. Democratic cooperation between labor, management, and government exceeded totalitarian command efficiency in every measurable metric. Industrial abundance buried ideological superiority under 25,400 shaped charges monthly, under 8,000-pound TNT equivalents packaged in 17-pound charges, under waste streams that exceeded enemy production capacity, under logistics networks that delivered unlimited materiel to any front within days. The mathematics were brutally simple. The nation that produced more, distributed more efficiently, and used resources more effectively would prevail regardless of individual soldier quality or tactical doctrine. Dorothy Richardson continued operating her mixing station, filling 847 charges daily, producing more in one 8-hour shift than Germany manufactured in 3 days. James Washington assembled 2,400 detonators daily, his rejection pile exceeding Japanese national production. The workers at Packard Plant No. 4 never saw the bridge at Oberwesel, never met the German soldiers who died in its collapse, never knew that their daily labor was systematically destroying enemy defensive capabilities across Europe. They simply came to work, operated their stations with efficiency that exceeded historical precedent, and went home. The casual nature of their industrial dominance was perhaps more devastating than any battlefield victory. America was defeating Germany without exertion, the industrial effort representing a fraction of total economic capacity. The lesson from Oberwesel demonstrated that underestimating free people's productive capacity when organized toward common purpose invited strategic catastrophe. Totalitarian efficiency was a myth when measured against democratic industrial output. Slave labor produced inferior products at lower volumes with higher failure rates. Free workers with economic incentives and workplace safety produced superior products at unprecedented volumes with minimal defects. The German soldier at Oberwesel was not inferior to his American counterpart in training, discipline, or courage. He was inferior in access to materiel, and that inferiority was decisive. The American engineer placing shaped charges on the bridge had unlimited explosives, unlimited ammunition supporting his advance, and unlimited confidence that logistics would deliver whatever he required. The German defender had carefully rationed bullets and demolition charges that had been allocated months earlier with no prospect of replacement. Courage could not overcome that disparity. March 17, 1945. Klaus Richter had laughed at American engineering capability, had dismissed production statistics as propaganda, had sworn his bridge would hold against any assault. April 15, 1945. His body remained buried under Rhine mud and collapsed concrete, recovered 3 weeks later by German civilians who were burying hundreds of bodies daily. His mockery became history's most catastrophic miscalculation, measured in 847 dead, 1,200 wounded, a bridge destroyed in 15 minutes, and an entire defensive line compromised by a single battalion of American engineers, equipped with explosives manufactured in a Detroit factory that Germans didn't believe existed. The lesson remains: dismissing democratic nations as weak because they prefer peace or underestimating free people's productive capacity when mobilized for war invites catastrophic miscalculation. Totalitarian regimes measured military capacity by army size and individual soldier quality. Democracies measured military capacity by industrial output and logistical efficiency. The clash between these philosophies was never a fair contest. The nation that could produce 534,000 shaped charges monthly, while its enemy produced 12,000 demolition packs, would prevail. The nation that could discard manufacturing waste exceeding its enemy's total output would win. The nation that equipped its workers with modern tools, paid them fair wages, and integrated their labor into efficient production systems would defeat the nation that relied on slave labor, forced production, and ideological fervor. Mathematical superiority combined with industrial capacity created military dominance that battlefield tactics could not overcome. Oberwesel Bridge demonstrated this principle with precision. American engineers demolished in 15 minutes what German military engineers swore would stand for months. The mathematics were irrefutable, and the mathematics determined outcomes.